It's the latest Bert Show murder mystery, yet I am not the author. This one is all Rebecca.
It's spooky season. My favorite month of the year. So last time we talked horror, I talked about who of you would survive a horror movie. And if you remember, that was Abby because she's the biggest square.
I believe the word you used was virginal, which I'm still taking offense to.
When you think, I did the equation, and you were the most virginal, which means you are the final girl. It's kind of horror movie science.
Just take it as a compliment, and that the rest of us are sluts.
Yeah.
I want to be a slut.
But you're alive.
You've got that in your own. That's in your own hands.
So Bert had asked me, okay, so we die, but how do we die? And I thought to myself, well, that's a great question. So I entered a darkened room. I turned on the TV and left some static playing. I grabbed my quill and my paper and I wrote the first chapter of the Bert Show horror movie, which I then handed off to Kristen to read.
Now, there is a twist at the end of this if you would like to explain to the Bert Show listeners.
So I have a few chapters lined up, and for each chapter, I'm giving the listeners the option to choose the fate of the Bert Show members, be it what cursed object do they pick up? Do they go in the basement? The fate of the hosts are in your hands.
Except for this one. It's like a choose your own adventure.
Yes.
Okay.
This one's just an intro, though, so it doesn't have that interactive thing. It's just setting it up. But next one, you will choose the fate of the Bert Show.
I love it. All right.
Do we get to walk out if we don't like it? Is that those same rules apply?
I mean, if you want to offend Rebecca, sure.
If you want to see me cry.
Well, you're a cancer survivor.
You said it.
You'll always have that.
That's true.
All right, Tommy, set the tone. Dead Air. The Bert Show horror movie. Chapter 1. How do you know the guy who owns this cabin again? Kristen asked, the monotone voice of the true crime podcast host playing faintly as she pulled a single AirPod from her ear. I met him on the street in Prague, Bert replied, grinning wildly. Mo glanced up from his phone. Weren't you, seriously zooted on that trip? I met him while I was high, Bert announced proudly.
Why is his voice like that? He's got me on the voices, guys.
Mo, have you ever said the word zooted?
I don't think so.
It's fiction, man. This is a fiction.
He handed me a piece of paper with an address and told me it's the perfect place for an established traveler such as myself. He held the tattered paper high above his head. Cassie glanced nervously at the bright red stain painting the corner. Is that blood? She shrieked. No, I think it's schnitzel sauce, Bert chirped, folding the paper back into his pocket. I'm telling you guys, this is going to be the best work retreat ever. Suddenly, Abby poked her head out from the front of the mobile RV. We're going to need to stop soon. Cassie, does this thing take regular gas? The crew pulled into the local station. Mo peered nervously through the curtained RV windows, the ramshackle building looking semi-abandoned. The windows were boarded and the roof was in tatters. The place had seen better days, perhaps pre-Civil War. I'm not getting out, Mo declared. I got it, sang Bert, hopping out of the mobile unit. He walked briskly over to the solitary gas pump. The handle groaned creakily as he pulled it out of its holster. Suddenly, a hand clamped down on his shoulder. We don't see too many of your kind around these parts, drawled Tommy, the gas station attendant. Radio personalities? Bert asked anxiously. City folk, Tommy snarled, moving his hand from Bert's shoulder. Now, where might you be going? We're going to Kill a Kid Cabin down by Homicide Lake, Bert replied brightly. You're staying at Carnage Creek? Tommy asked, a wild look in his eyes. I think it's pronounced Carnegie, said Bert. Tommy stood quietly for a moment. No one's been in that cabin since the incident in 74, he muttered quietly. We're going to do some team building, said Bert, happily pumping gas. All of a sudden, Tommy grabbed Bert's shoulders. He spun him around, his face contorted with a nameless expression. "Whatever you do, don't go down in the basement," Tommy quietly warned. "I'm more of a veranda guy myself," Bert blurted, "but thanks for the advice. I'll be sure to pass that along." Bert dropped the dispenser back into the pump and gave Tommy a friendly slap on the back, leaving a trail of oil on his Buc-ee's minted overalls. "See you around." Tommy watched solemnly as the modestly sized yet family-appropriate mobile home disappeared around the corner. He shook his head. "Home sweet home," shouted Bert, ambling toward the cabin. The rest of the crew grabbed their luggage and pulled it towards the door. "I don't know if I can do this," muttered Mo, eyeing the old cabin apprehensively. "I call the queen bed," shouted Abby, barreling past him. "Which room is that?" "I think that's in the basement," said Kristen. She glanced towards the door and noticed a large sign. The words, "Get out," sprawled clumsily over the wood. "Do you think that's from Etsy?" she wondered aloud as they entered the cabin. Abby ignored her, beelining for the basement, Caucasianly. "Wait!" shouted Bert. Everybody froze in the middle of the rustic living room. "Let's take a shot," he announced, magically pulling a bottle of Clase Azul from his lapel. "To a productive, unplugged retreat with my favorite coworkers." "Can we put our stuff down first?" asked Cassie, struggling to hold the entire box set of Akatar in her hands. "All right, fine," Bert grumbled, "but there's one thing I need to tell you before you pick your rooms. It's pretty important." The cast hesitated. All eyes moved to Bert, waiting with bated breath for him to speak. "I forgot." The hatch in the middle of the living room swung open with a violent bang. The cast fell to the floor in shock, scrambling away from the newly opened chamber. After a few shaky breaths, Bert dragged himself towards the opening, peering into the void. "I think we need to check that out," he said softly. Mo sighed to himself. "These white people are going to get me killed."
Thanks.
To be continued.
Okay. All right.
Do they go in the basement? You tell me. They are. They're going. They're going down there.
Yeah.
I'm flattered to know that you see me sort of as a half Michael Scott, half Shaggy character.
You're very gung-ho. You have great energy.
Very enthusiastic.
All right, Shaggy Scott. Oh my God.
Shaggy Scott.
At least you don't talk like this.
The Bert Show.